A very good morning and welcome to Morning Express on this first day of October 2020. I take this opportunity to wish you a happy new month. This is Morning Express. My name is Michael Gitonga. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Well, what do we have lined up for you? As usual, we're going to be looking at what's making headlines on the dailies. We'll also be flipping through a few international dailies and see what's making headlines internationally. But later on, we're going to be looking at teenage relationships. And not too long ago, we had a 15-year-old who stabbed her 17-year-old boyfriend to death. And this is because they had a love row. And of course, that leaves you wondering, what are our teenagers up to? And since when did 15-year-olds get so involved to a point where they stabbed each other with a 17-year-old? And that's going to be our discussion later on. We're going to be having a psychologist joining us. We'll also have teenagers who are going to be giving us, just a little bit of insight of what their world is like when it comes to romantic relationships. And I'm sure for many parents, they'll probably would not be encouraging their children who are teenage to be in a romantic relationship. But what does their world look like? That and more right here on Morning Express. And, well, in regards to that particular topic that we're going to be having later on, should teenagers be allowed to get involved in romantic relationships? That's a question that we'd like you to fill us in. What are your thoughts? Should teenagers be allowed to be involved in romantic relationships? The hashtag is KTN Morning Express. If you'd like to tweet, it's at KTN News KE, or you can tweet me directly, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga. Should teenagers be allowed to get involved in romantic relationships? I'm sure there's some who probably would even say, should even adults be allowed to get into romantic relationships? Still looking at how some of them turn out to be. So that's going to be right here on Morning Express. As usual, you're welcome to participate in the show throughout as we go along. I'm going to be introducing the guest that's going to be going through the dailies with me in just a bit. But first, let's look at what's making headlines internationally. And we'll start right here in Uganda, or rather Tanzania, where we have the Citizen. And SAFE lays down case for Zanzibar full autonomy. We do know that Zanzibar is going to be going into elections not too long from now. So Zanzibar presidential candidate for ACT was Zalendo ticket yesterday, reiterated the need that there'll be a full autonomy government, which will build its own economy and respect the people's rights. And that's what's going on in Zanzibar. And let's take a look at the next daily there, which is the BBC. And of course, this is still weighing in on the Joe Biden-Trump debate, which I'm sure by now you've probably seen enough memes. You've seen a number of videos that have been going through, because it was nothing less than chaos. It was just a chaotic debate, so to speak. And under fire, Trump seeks to qualify the far-right remarks. And this, of course, is coming after he was asked to denounce, the extremist, groups that are there, including Proud Boys, which he went round and did not really give a full disclosure. And his remarks was something to the extent that he doesn't know who the Proud Boys are. And as a result, he did not really, renounce them fully. Let's look at Al Jazeera. And we have the Al Jazeera there. Trump says Proud Boys should stand down. U.S. election news. That again is that debate, and the fact that at the point during the debate he was asked to denounce the extremists. He did to some extent say that he was not part of them, but later on when he was asked to denounce the Proud Boys, he did not do that. Let's finally look at the CNN and see what's there. And saying that the debate, Trump allies offer public praise but privately worry. And again, this is to do with those remarks regarding the extremists. Some of the U.S. president's allies said they believe he crashed and burned on big debate night. Now, according to some polls that I've been looking through on this presidential debate, it shows that Joe Biden might have a slight lead over Trump. But then again, that remains to be seen. And over time, we'll see how that's going to pan out. If you speak to those in the U.S., majority of them I'm not too sure whether Trump will make it back or not, and it's still too early to call. There's quite a huge number of the electorate that are still not decided as to who their presidential candidate is. Remember, the other controversy that there is in the U.S. is in regards to their voting. They're going to be voting via their post offices, and Trump has raised that as a matter of concern because he says the elections could be rigged, but that, of course, has been brought about because of COVID-19. The queue system and the normal voting systems may not be able to work, particularly when we look at social distancing. So that's the US, and we're going to be looking at that. There's a story on page 3 or page 2 of the Standard. But let me first of all introduce the guest that we're going to be having this discussion with, and Suleiman Bashir, who is a lawyer. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Suleiman.
Good morning, Michael, and thank you for having me.
Even look at the headlines, since we've already gone to the United States with some of those headlines. On page 2 of the Standard, we have Trump and Biden trade insults in chaotic debate. I'm sure by now you've probably, had a look at that debate and maybe followed up on that. What are your thoughts on that particular debate?
I think, Michael, I've been following that debate, and I think it sets a very bad example, especially of a country that we regard as the champion of democracy and the rule of law, a country that we expect to lead by example to all other nations of this globe. So when we followed that debate, at the end of the debate, I think both American citizens and all the other people on this planet who are following that debate deduced the fact that nothing substantial came out of that debate. We expected them to maybe discuss serious issues to do with health, democracy, the killing of the blacks in the US. Those are the kind of issues that we expected the candidates to share their opinion on how they could go about it. Mm-hmm. But what we saw there is one insulting the other, another one interfering with the other one equally who was branded a sleepyhead at the end of the debate. I think it was far below the expectation of the viewers and all those who are following that.
Absolutely, it was way below bar, and there are those pundits who have also come out to say that it was, for Biden, the bar was very low. All he needed to do was literally walk over the bar, because with President Trump, he hardly gave an opportunity for Biden to speak. He kept interrupting, everything that Biden had to say, which of course was not expected of a presidential debate.
I think, in my view, that was a strategy on the part of Trump. Trump is quite cunning and mischievous. So his continued interruption and disruption, I think, was to disrupt the line of thoughts of Biden. So maybe that was a strategy on the part of Trump, and it worked for him. Because many a times, whilst Biden was trying to address various issues, Trump kept interrupting, and that did indeed interfere with the chain and line of thoughts of Biden. So it was a good strategy on his part.
All right. Well, we still have another 2 debates in October. I think one on the 22nd, if I'm not wrong. And we'll wait and see whether that's going to improve. But Trump, of course, is just Trump. Let's now look at our local dailies and what we have on the headlines. And we start off with the Standard, where we have Maragas 10 or 10, a gift to Uhuru. This is according to the AG. And the good thing is that we have a lawyer this morning to look at this. And what do you make of this? We now have the AG, Kehara Kariuki, giving an argument and saying that the government's chief legal advisor, arguing that Maragas advised, if it's heeded, to dissolve parliament, it just might hand over Uhuru another 5-year term, or at least a lengthened term. And this is because, according to him, that the length of the presidency is attached to the length of parliament. Your thoughts on this, Suleiman?
You see, Michael, firstly, if we ask ourselves where the AG came from, Justice Kehara Kariuki was one time the president of the Court of Appeal Judges. This is a judge of an impeccable record. The kind of judgments he once shared or made were of good repute and good record. But right now, the kind of argument that he's bringing forward is not even an argument that a first-year law student would think of. When I look at the kind of arguments he's trying to bring forward, he's trying to link a vacancy or a dissolution of parliament with a completion of a term. When we look at the Constitution of Kenya under Article 103, Article 103 talks about a vacancy arising in the office of a member of parliament. It lists various ways in which a vacancy might arise. One of the ways within which a vacancy might arise is where a member is removed under the Constitution. That's one of the ways. And in this scenario, it is through Article 261, Sub-Article 7. So that means the way within which a vacancy is arising in this case is through the Constitution. Now, what is the next thing? Does this amount to a general election in the event the parliament is dissolved? That is far away from, I think, the reality. When we look at Article 101, Sub-Article 4, which provides for a by-election, it simply talks about a member or members losing a seat and coming back to fill or finish their term. So in this case, we are likening this scenario with a by-election. It is basically a dissolution of parliament to pave way for Kenyans to elect new members of parliament who will come in to complete the term of office. And when we talk about the term of office, this means the time that the next general election shall be held, 5 years from the previous from the time when we have had the previous general election. So, and again, just to share this, the AG seems to be misinterpreting an article here. Article 142 of the Constitution, that is the article that provides for the term of the president. When we refer to that article does not talk about 5 years or anything. It simply says the term of office of a president shall be from the time when a president assumes office until the time when the next president is sworn into office. It doesn't refer to the issue of 5 years. I think that is where the AG is trying to that's how the AG is trying to loosely look at the Constitution. But I wish to again refer Kenyans and the honorable viewers to Article 102 of our Constitution. Article 102 provides for the term of parliament. And the term of parliament expires on the date of the next general election. The next general election shall be held exactly 5 years from the previous date the date that you have had the previous general election. So when we combine the two, this simply means, in as much as Article 142 does not talk about 5 years for a president, it's simple. It talks about 5 years, and 5 years in this case refers to the expiry of 5 years from the date we have had our previous general election.
Right,
so I think it is totally.
Okay, and what do you make of his comment that he's arguing that the head of the judiciary is out of order and has an intention to cause harm to the country? As far as we know, he only did what is required constitutionally. He merely just, as it were, like a clerk, read out what needs to be done based on the Constitution. But we have the AG now accusing the head of the judiciary of an intention to cause harm to the country. What do you make of that as a lawyer?
You see, Michael, various legal pundits and the Attorney General are bringing forth an argument that is quite fallacious. Whatever the provision of the Constitution, that is Article 261, Sub-Article 7, that the Chief Justice had applied in this instance, he did not bring it outside of the Constitution. It is an article that is well encapsulated under our Constitution. It is not a provision that he has brought from his house or from Nyamir or any other place. It is simply provided for in our laws. So in that regard, he simply, the advisory rendered by the CJ is within the confines of our law. You ask yourself, what was the rationale behind having Article 261 if we cannot apply it? The article is well applied in this case, and the CJ has rendered his advisory with all due respect to the petitions that are before the High Court, whereby Justice Weldon Korir has so far proffered an interim order on this.
All right, and we'll wait and see how this is going to pan out. And of course, we wait to see whether the president is going to, so far he hasn't made any mention of that particular advisory, and we'll wait as a country and see how that goes. But there's also an interesting angle that the AG brings in, and this is the angle of having the elected members of parliament, should we dissolve parliament, the question of whether, if they are re-elected, they will be re-elected for another 5-year term, or would their term expire at the point where our next general election is due?
You see, Michael, whatever arguments that are now coming forth on the part of the Attorney General, the answer to that is one. The dissolution of Parliament, in the event Parliament is dissolved and we have new members who are elected, does the dissolution of Parliament, in the event we have one, will it amount to a by-election? That is the question. In the event it does, That means Parliament or the newly elected parliamentarians will come to office to finish the rest of the term. Once we answer that, or once we get that rightful answer, the questions of term of presidency term of office of the president to be extended will not be there. So right now, what is happening is this: the vacancy or the anticipated dissolution of Parliament is well within Article 261 of the Constitution. When we look at Article 103, Article 103 anticipates a vacancy in the office of a member of Parliament through the Constitution. And this is one such scenario. In the event we have a vacancy, it is simple. We shall go for a by-election. This is not a general election. A by-election in the sense that the newly elected officials or parliamentarians will come to complete a term. Exactly, that is it. So I think this is totally misleading on the part of the Attorney General.
All right, and do get yourself a copy of the Standard to see what that discourse is all about. Maraga Tano Tena, gift for Uhuru, according to the AG. That's the headline for the Standard. But moving on to another story on the Standard, we have on page 6, and it is time to resume learning, CS says. Your thoughts on the CS for education? He's been under a lot of scrutiny, and there are those who feel that he has really misled people with mara tufungue, mara tusifungue, we open, we don't. Now, the president gave, his address not too long ago and made it very clear we are not going to be in a hurry to take our children back to school. But according to the CS, he says it's time to resume learning, although he does not give a date.
You see, clearly, the CS is reading from a different script. The head of state made an elaborate speech. He said the only time we shall reopen our schools is when we are prepared enough to protect the lives of our learners. I think that is improper. On the other part, the CS has shared with us flip-flopping dates on when schools shall resume. The other day he said that college students, especially the final years, shall resume school. I think this is a rush, and this rush is what might cause anarchy in this country. Let me give you an example. On the 23rd of September, schools in Manchester were reopened. I think 5 days down the line, on or about 28th of September, they had to close all the schools in Manchester. It's because of that rushed process. What happened is the UK suffered the second wave of the virus. This tells us, or this begs the question, as Kenyans, are we prepared for the second wave of this pandemic? In the event, God forbid, that happens, who will take liability? Who will be liable in the event, God forbid, we lose our learners? So I think the way forward is we should not be in a rush. We should rather be procedural, prepare ourselves enough, and not just enough preparation on the part of just schools, but we should equally consult. We should get the views of all the stakeholders. All stakeholders in the sense that we have parents, we have teachers, we have learners. All these are stakeholders, and these are the divergent opinions and views that we should get. That is the only time the state should be willing to enable us prepare should give us the dates as to the opening of schools.
All right, there are those who argue that with the economy being opened up, bars, pubs, and pretty much everything other than schools, well, there's the argument that learners are still under risk even at home because, if people go out to drink, if people go out to work, if people go out to church, they go out everywhere, they still have to come home to these learners. So what are we protecting them from? Should we keep them at home?
You see, Mike, part of the issues that has happened is it is the political class that has made a full mockery of the regulations and the restrictions. What has happened is we have had political rallies all over, but on the other part, we argued that, yes, we are not prepared for schools. But that doesn't justify the question that even yesterday, I think we had lost about 4 or 5 Kenyans to this virus. This tells us that we are not yet off the hook. So in as much as the political elite is making a mockery of the regulations and the restrictions, that doesn't amount to an argument that we should open our schools just because the politicians have been proceeding with their rallies. 2 wrongs do not make a right. I think what we should do is we should put in place a mechanism to control the loss of lives. On the other part, those who had been attending to these rallies, these are adults. We cannot compare these to kindergartens. These are kids who will be, at a bigger risk in the event they report to school. And we know the excitement with the reopening of schools and how much the students interact. So to that extent, we might have a serious backlash. In the event we reopen our schools without any plans.
We also have on page 10, cheers to good old times as revelers quench their thirst. And this, of course, is referring to Kenyans going back to their drinking habits, with the president now reopening the, selling of alcohol in bars and public places. And this, of course, is likely to put us at risk. However, this was a balance the government had to, a balancing act they had to make, given that the economy was suffering adversely. Do you feel this was the right call, and do you feel that Kenyans are responsible enough to be left to their own?
I think, Mike, the rightful way to put it is this. Those who are operating the bars, the bar owners and operators, should put in place mechanisms to avert the spread of the virus. On the other part, the reopening of the bars, I do not think in my view that that's a wrong thing. We have a macroeconomy that has been surviving through the livelihood that they are making under the bars and restaurants that were running. So I think what has happened is, in a way, yes, it will have a critical contribution to our economy. When we look at the amendments that Parliament ordinarily makes every financial year, the excise duty law is amended, and the state ordinarily imposes tax on alcoholic products. This tells us that the alcoholic product is a critical income, or offers a critical income to our economy. Without forsaking that, we should do a balance between having the bar owners complying with the regulations and restrictions, and on the other part, allowing Kenyans to maybe and the revelers in general to enjoy themselves to a certain extent. So I think it is about a balance. Reopening the bars will have a critical contribution to our economy, but on the flip side, without exercising any due care, it will have a serious backlash on our lives as Kenyans.
A negative effect. And there you go. Well, let's now look at the Daily Nation, and we have the headline: 405 parties line up for Ruto-Raila duel. Now, this is a piece that's looking, into the future, and saying that there is a rush to have political parties registered. And this, of course, is as expected that Raila and Ruto might go head to head. And this, of course, puts in light the use of our political parties. They've for a long time been known as what we call SPVs, special purpose vehicles. They're purely there to get power, but do not deliver anything after that. Your thoughts on this, the scramble for political parties?
You see, Michael, when we look at the Constitution of Kenya, together with the Political Parties Act of 2011, it provides for an elaborate mechanism whereby various parties can come up with parties of their choice and register their own parties in compliance with certain rules. That's the price of democracy. It is under the democratic principles that various persons are able to register certain political parties. I think that is very well in order. It is part of exercising their democratic right. But on the other part, we ask our questions the following issues. One, we have had the 4-point agenda on the part of the Jubilee government. We equally have the Jubilee manifesto that has promised Kenyans various goodies. The question is, the Jubilee party is so far in power for about, I think, 7 to 8 years. Has it met the obligations and the various promises that it has made to Kenyans? What we see is each and every day, it is a political circus, political stories that Kenyans are treated to. And these are theatrics that will not end. In Kenya, it is very difficult to predict which political party, which politician shall be using during the election. It is equally difficult to predict who will be running for presidency. It is again equally difficult to predict who will be within which lineup. In Kenya, I think until we get to the date of a general election, we shall have a lot of circus, a lot of theatrics, and we shall be prepared. We as Kenyans, we are used to that. But I think what we hope is for the government of the day to make it good, that the various promises it has made to Kenyans are met.
All right, and your thoughts on how we are going to sort this out? Because if we look at, for instance, that article we've looked at on the dissolution of Parliament given by the CJ, it's constitutional. But the reason we're getting there is because we have a Parliament that was not able to keep up with what they were supposed to do, even constitutionally. Of course, there is argument as to whether there was a solution given as to how we're supposed to achieve the two-thirds gender bill. But if we look at it now in reverse, right from the political party, we have a problem whereby those who come up to be the elected members could be already a problem, such that now, as a country, we do not advance because we don't have the right quality of leaders.
You see, Mike, the solution to this lies at the voting stage, at the ballot. It is for Kenyans to elect people of good repute, of good character, and people who are committed
But you see, my argument, Suleiman, is that right at the political party, the selection of people who we are going to going to elect is already a problem, because right at the political party level, they're pre-selected, and we're not really involved in that pre-selection process, such that we're only given a choice of bad fruit, so to speak.
You see, Mike, I think that should not be a problem. Kenyans, still, we have very many Kenyans who ordinarily run on independent party tickets. And those people are ordinarily elected. We have had MPs, senators, and governors who have been elected on independent member tickets. I think when a political heavyweight or a political party tries to impose a certain leader on Kenyans, that doesn't make Kenyans to cow to that pressure. Kenyans still have an opportunity to elect who they want, regardless of the political party affiliation, and that is the move we need to make. That is the move we need to make. This is the time that we should stop being attached to a political party, but rather to ideologies and principles. When we talk about the Jubilee Party, for instance, or the NASA affiliation, NASA alliance, or the ODM for that sake, when a member of the ODM political party stands through that party to maybe woo voters, the voters or the electorate should stop voting on the basis of political parties. This is the time for Kenyans to analyze the respective candidate and vote for him or her on the basis of principles. And Mike, just to weigh in on the solution that you are suggesting on the way forward with respect to the impending or expected dissolution of parliament is Article 165. Under Article 165, a petition has been lodged before the High Court. The High Court shall guide us on the way forward. In as much as we have Article 261 sub Article 7 of the Constitution, within which the CJ has made a certain move, the Constitution of Kenya is not there to make the lives of Kenyans difficult. It is there to better our lives, and there are ways to go about it. In the event the High Court advises us under Article 165, we shall have to uphold the rule of law. But on the flip side, when it comes to addressing everything under the ballot, Kenyans still have their choice and their vote on the basis of who they want, be it through an independent party member or be it through a political party member.
All right, and thank you for that. And the last story I want us to look at is on page 6 of The Nation, which says, "I have excelled in my job," says Ruto, the second in command, giving himself an appraisal. And of course, he was being criticized for not having his work, but he came out to say that every single job that he has been given by his boss, he has done and done it excellently. What are your thoughts on this?
You see, Michael, the expectation of the Constitution is this. Article 147 gives the function of or outlines the functions of the Deputy President. The Deputy President is listed as the principal assistant to the head of state or to the President. The expectation of the Constitution is that the head of state shall need an assistant to execute the mandate of the government, because it is colossal, it is so much for the head of state. So within that anticipation of Article 147, the DP had to commit himself to ensuring that the 4-point agenda of the government is met, and that is how he is able to assist his president, or that's the boss. Now that is the expectation of our laws. On the other part, the deputy president that we have right now is the deputy party leader of the Jubilee Party. The Jubilee Party has its own manifesto. He has 2-point obligation under the Constitution of Kenya to see to it that the governmental decisions or governmental objectives are met under Article 147 by being the principal assistant to the president. And on the other part, or by virtue of being the deputy party leader of a political party, the political party has had its own manifesto. He should now commit to seeing to it